So, good morning to our friends on the West Coast and good afternoon to our friends on the East Coast. Welcome to our webinar today, Talent Acquisition 2026, the trends that will redefine hiring. My name is Jessica Oberto, Chief Operating Officer at People Science. If this is your first time joining us, People Science provides talent acquisition advisory and recruitment process partnering, along with our proprietary software HireGate, which is our HR tech that we created in-house, and it provides data and AI-driven insights that you could be missing from your ATS. If you'd like, you can visit us at people-science.com to learn more, or just reach out after the webinar, and we'd be happy to schedule a call with you. So our webinars, if you haven't joined us before, are more conversational between our panel of guests. So if at any point during the hour you'd like to include something or ask a question, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get back to you. So now I'd like to introduce our guest for today. First, we have People Science and HireGate CEO and founder, Christine Nicholas. Christine has spent 30 years reimagining how organizations can attract top talent and partnering with them to do so. Through People Science and HireGate, she has delivered smarter, data-driven hiring to people. Next, we have Jeff Taylor. He's founder and CEO of Boomband. Jeff is a serial entrepreneur and the visionary founder of Monster.com. Jeff has helped redefine online job search and transformed how millions of people have found work. Today, he's bringing that same bold innovation to networking and career growth as a founder of Boomband, which we'll learn a little bit more about today. And then we have Lindsay Roundtree, our Chief Talent and Product Officer. Lindsay leads recruiting teams. She integrates the latest HR tech and rolls out the metrics and market insights that drive measurable business results for our clients at People Science and HireGate. So welcome everyone to the webinar. Thanks for being here today, Jeff. We're excited to have you.
Excited to be here. I'm in a WeWork in Boston, so I'm in a space that's like 3x3. So if there's a little echo, it is what it is.
We trapped the monster.
That's right.
We just got him in there. I'm so excited that you're here, Jeff. We have so much to talk about. And, you know, for our regular followers, the numbers are back. So we're going to start taking a look at that. Before we do that, I just want to say happy birthday, Jessica. Today's her birthday. She didn't have to be here. She elected to be here because we're her favorite people now. She can't wait to get out of here, I'm sure. No, Jess, thank you so much for everything you do. And hip, hip.
Thank you.
Okay, another shout out. I'd like to give a shout out to Jess and her recent promotion to Chief Operating Officer here at People Science. Congratulations. And Lindsay Roundtree, our Chief Talent Director and our Chief Product Designer for HireGate, those two intertwined. Lindsay, thank you for all your work and congratulations on your promotion. We're all looking forward to going into 2026 with a robust attitude about what the heck is going on, right, Jess? So, Jess, you want to take us there with the deck and start? I am happy to say that we do have some numbers. If you're joining us for the first time, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Jeff's thoughts and where we see this panel is, what their perception is, and yours. But as we do that, we always start talking about three things. What are the numbers that we see right now? As far as talent is concerned, talent acquisition and talent as a whole, things that are going on in HR. We always talk about diversity and we always talk about the stance of AI, unless for some reason it's a special occasion. And we also talk about remote work. So we like to give you updates on those three things. So let's just move ahead right into that. I am going to get to the numbers in just a second, but I really wanted to talk first about diversity and inclusion because as we do these webinars, it's kind of fallen off the track. When we talked about the Trump administration's viewpoint of D&I and many of the different protections that have been out there and how they're changing, it's an interesting world in DEI. So I thought it was interesting to really take a deep dive last week and say, what are we seeing for 2026? I think these are some really, really important factors that are different than what we've heard before in diversity. So the narrative right now is really to push D&I to become more holistic. Inclusive will become more inclusive, meaning let's look at absolutely everybody and elevate absolutely everybody. This should be an easy thing to do, right? Okay. Conflict will continue to rise and groups will be shouting for a seat. So, of course, if you're going to try and elevate everybody and say this should be an open, pragmatic situation, how do we do that without groups saying, I need to be heard more because I'm more discriminated against? third bullet is AI could make or break the inclusion, and it'll be at the forefront. I think that's a radical statement for 2026. So I think that's a lot to do to change things that quickly. But I think it's very interesting that I saw this repeated actually 5 times from different sources. Neurodiversity starts towards coming of age. So, the first time I really thought about neurodiversity and saw neurodiversity come to the stage in diversity programs was back in 2016. I think we're starting to see more and more of that as we've, gotten more educated ourselves in what is the definition of neurodiversity. I'm hard pressed these days to find anybody who isn't neurodiverse. I like to think we all are. Okay. Skills first and age inclusivity will take a foothold. I think this is a very hopeful statement. And we'll see if we can continue. We have seen a marked increase in the attention towards skills as compared to necessarily education levels. And I think the age inclusivity, there's a lot of lawsuits out there right now pertaining to ATSs. And I think too, because boomers are still in the workforce, right? I'm tail end of boomers. So I say we're still here, we're still working. And I think that the voice is kind of coming to the top as far as inclusion is concerned. The human-centric leadership will continue to grow with an eye towards diversity. Well-being will be a staple. I thought it was very interesting to me. I'd like to get the panel's take on this, that well-being is a resounding theme that is coming up under diversity these days. So is that to say if your well-being is off, you're now in a protected class or should be? Anybody have any thoughts on that at this point?
I would just say the worry about well-being is when things are going well for companies, they tend to start to focus on DEI initiatives. And it's not to say that they aren't there as an underlayment all the time, but there's more focus on hiring military and thinking about our employees' well-being and thinking about internal mobility and things. When things are going tough, I think all these things get pushed down. And it doesn't mean that there isn't commitment to these things in the organizations, but they're not top of mind. They're not top of discussions. And so I worry that when it says well-being will be a staple, then the thing I would say, but is it just going to be an assumption as opposed to something that people are really watching for with their employees?
I think that's a good take on it. I'm just surprised that it's kind of being lumped into diversity. I think we're just seeing the profession of diversity and inclusion changing, right? Diverse our leaders within our organizations, our chief diversity officers, and where the attention going. I do think this is part of the natural evolution, and having worked specifically on diversity and inclusion for about 14 years and really have put a concerted effort, this is different language and different topics than what I've heard before. So, as things change and as we evolve, I think we're going to see a different kind of diversity put forward. I hope we can emotionally manage this, right? Because that's where we get these outbursts and we have different kinds of scenes out there. But I think 26 will be interesting to see how these things pan out. In fact, we might want to, let's look at this at the end of next year and see what's really happened, right? We should do that, Jess and Lynn. We should really go back and look at what we saw for last year. Mm-hmm. So the last 2 bullets are resource groups. They seem to be getting a lot of attention and a lot of support, both politically and within organizations, to continue to grow them. And pay transparency will keep climbing. I think more and more states are signing. And Jeff, didn't you just say something about seeing job advertisements with salaries posted in there?
51% of job postings include salary now, up 6.1% from a year ago. And so I think that's one of the things I hear about people applying is that the propensity to apply is much higher if the salary is there. But there's some challenges about range because, you go into a car dealership and the person says this car is from 16 to 19,000 or whatever. All you hear is 16 and all the salesperson hears is 19, right? So I think there always are challenges about these ranges because you get it in your head that I'll get a bump, and the reality is you get into conversations and it won't be so. So I think it's good that we have targets out there for it. The question is, will people follow it in the actual jobs?
Yeah. And I don't know. I know there's states that are mandating and states that aren't mandating. So I think that, that's where we can see that pick up. It'll be interesting to see if any other states jump on board this year.
Yeah. Could I just challenge one other thing in the middle of that list? There's two things that are together. I think they could probably be separate. So skills first, there's such a movement right now to skills. And I do agree that more and more listings aren't listing college requirements. I did read an article that referenced that only 3% of those jobs actually are hired by somebody that doesn't have a college degree. So it's still in the primary of the decision making, but at least on the front end, they're saying you don't need it. So I think we're in that transition period right now around college education. But they're also saying you don't need 10 years of experience any longer. You just need to be able to pass the assessment. And so that's more proficiency around the skill than just how many years experience you write down about it. The challenge with that is coding tests are now under huge duress because people could cheat. And they've got their little AI buddy right next to them, their little vibe coder that's giving them the answers. And a lot of times these coding tests are on your own time. And so they're just really, that's like a take-home test with AI right next to you. Not going to be very helpful. So I think that's an area that's going to get more definition in 2026. The part I wanted to call out was this age inclusivity. And I think that, yes, there's 4 generations working, and there's different views of these different generations. Millennials have a certain view of boomers. Boomers have a certain view of Gen Z. These are really bad, these labels that everybody gets. And I think we have to break that down. The thing I do know is a lot of people I talk to that are out of work are boomers and finding it really, really difficult to get jobs. And so I always take the stance that you've got to fight to be in the game as opposed to complain about being out of it. And so I'm also a later baby boomer, and fighting to be in the game is so thrilling. But there's a lot of people that just can't fight to be in that game, and so that's going to be an issue in 2026, I think.
Well, and I think it's interesting how many of my friends in my age bracket, again, at the very tail end here, that are retired that are saying, I want to do something. I want to do something. And they're getting back in the game. I don't see a lot of them struggling, by the way, going for the consulting side. But I think if you lose a position at this point, at this age, then it's, difficult.
Yeah, those are the, if I look at the seekers, I call them players that I'm working with. I've got a new podcast that's called the Boomband Showcase, and I'm talking to a number of candidates in the boomer space. And I try to mix it up so I get people at different ages on the show. But there are challenges just getting anybody to kind of any sort of human interaction in this job search process.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's coveted right now and not happening.
It's terrible. And I'm glad you brought that up. If for no other reason is that the people on this webinar and the people watching this webinar, you're the only ones who can change this. The black hole has to be changed from an HR perspective. I don't know how you're going to do it exactly. I know it's part of the work that Jess and team do here, but it's so important. So good to hear it. Just in the essence of time. So one comment that I think we're seeing with the remote work, hybrid work, I think we're seeing these creative solutions now where companies saying, how do we work? And then how do you work within our organization so that we all work the same way with the same comfort levels and that we're the most productive? I've seen an edge towards that as compared to you're all remote, you're partly remote, you're in 2 days, you're out 3 days, you're in 3 days. Instead of these like specific kind of hard outlines of timeframes of where you are, I'm seeing more fluidity. Would the panel say that too?
I would agree. And I've read something this morning, an article on micro-shifting. So being able to do your work remotely, hybrid, or even in the office, but making it livable, right? So if your kid has a dentist appointment at lunchtime, you take the dentist appointment at lunchtime and maybe you log on after dinner to finish up or make up for that time. Honestly, I feel like mothers have been doing this forever, but always feeling guilty about it and under pressure about it. But I do feel with the rise of remote work and allowing a little bit more flexibility, it's something that people are actually talking about. And now it has a coined phrase that we're using. And I think everyone works differently. Some people think better in the morning. Some people think better in the afternoon. and allowing your employees that flexibility to do their job when they're working at their best, I think only adds value.
Yeah. Can I just say one of the things I've been hearing is the idea that we're returned to office, and there's a lot of focus and energy on that. And there's some people that were hired during the pandemic or whatever aren't going to be able to do that. And there's these rules happening now where people are saying you can work from home, but you can't get promoted. And I think this is a disaster. Like this idea of having people move back to an area so that they can actually attend their job in person. I think that what that's doing is that's culling A players. That's not culling your B and C players. And I think the idea that you work at a company that's not going to promote you and has openly stated it because you're working from home, I think that person at some point is going to start to look for a job. And so this is the great stay, like, the quiet quitting happening right now. Sorry to coin these things that are out there, right? But people who have jobs are trying to keep them any way they can. But that doesn't mean that they're actually engaged and really productive. And so I think these are going to continue to be big issues in 2026.
Well, and I think the younger generations in the workforce are educating the older generations in the workforce, all of us, in what it's like to think differently about where we work and how we work, but where we work, right? Because if you're questioning these things and you're kind of like, this is the only way I know, so it's difficult for me to change. And I'm still seeing that at the senior level. Yeah. Right. Even though you'll go through an organization and we'll say, no, your productivity is actually higher. They're not feeling it. So it has to be a lot of proof of concept, but I think it's just a timing issue. And I think we have a lot to learn from the younger generations taking us up there. Cool.
Yeah, there's a weird spot right here, though, where the Gen Z crowd really probably needs the networking and the mentorship. And so are kind of open to going back. Where the millennials and the boomers, actually boomers are fine to go back to the office is what I've seen, but it's these groups in the middle that are actually reticent to go back. And so there's this networking thing. You lose your job. You've only been in your job for 2 years. You never even met any of the people that you worked with at your company. I mean, that's a difficult situation to try to ask for help. And so these are all challenges. And I think I'm stating the obvious. These are the things that are, on people's minds. And but there's different generations have different needs, and our sort of mandates as corporations, I think, are a little tone deaf as it relates to this.
Yeah. I think where there's confusion, it's just kind of deer in the headlights. And then it's like, I'll stay my course because I can, right?
Or I'll dig in with
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get behind my decision.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Jess, take us to the numbers. So the unemployment rate for November went up to 4.6. To kind of put this in context, the last time I take COVID out of the mix because COVID, too many things at once, right? The last time that this number was at 4.6 was actually August of 2017. So, it's interesting that every single month for the last few years, when you read the BLS report, it does say marginal increase, didn't change much. But to me, watching this change, because we go back to last year, we started more in the 3s, inching up to the 4s, 4.6. By the way, 4.6 does not scare me. Most economists will tell you 5.9 to 6.2 is considered full employment. We're far from that. But I think this is indicative of the change, a gradual change that we're seeing in people exiting the workforce. I don't think we're going to see the same kind of long-term unemployment because I think more solves are in place than we saw during the Great Recession and even the recession before that. However, I think that, we could see this continue to climb a bit. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Just writing a couple notes here. Every tenth of a point in what is reported as BLS is about 150 or 160,000 workers. So if you look from July, where we were at 4.2 to where we are at 4.6, so that'd be 600,000 displaced workers And then I look at the headlines. I think the headlines probably trump those numbers. If you look at either the layoffs that happened or the layoffs that are predicted to happen, I think Amazon is a good example where they did some of them now and some of them are likely to be in 2026. I've always been suspect of BLS, non-farm payroll. If we just logically think about this, it's a survey, and it doesn't include the farming industry, which is a big industry in that number, right? It doesn't include solopreneurs and that startup group and those people that operate as consultants are an important part of the economy, always have been, not measured. And then I look overall at, if there's 175 million workers in the workforce, there's about 100 million workers that are knowledge workers, right? And so I'm just providing a little bit of basis for these numbers and what this impact really means. But if you put another million people in the workforce, out of work and in the job market, there's a lot of pressure. And that's what people are feeling right now. And I always tell people, try to ignore the pressure and think about, okay, your job in your area is not competing with 2 million people that are out of work. Your job in your area can be more focused. Now you're a nurse and you're in the Boston area. It's a much smaller group that are out of work, and nursing doesn't have a lot of people out of work, just as an example. So there's a propensity to be able to get a role is going to be more positive for you if you break the numbers down to your very close area where you're looking. But the BLS numbers, I think, don't tell the story in a way that's helpful for us. And I think the fact that October is missing is that geopolitical pressure that's on us, I think, is reflective even in this chart we're looking at. And so I start looking at other areas. If I could just take one more minute, I'm partnered with Aspen Technology Labs. I like their numbers. They report monthly. They collect jobs from about 200,000 corporate websites, and they also collect jobs from the top applicant tracking systems. And so they're saying the numbers fell about 5% in November, a lot of that being seasonal, but 4.4% lower than year over year. I think that's a good number by comparison. And then I look at some facts that sit in that. Wages are still strong. So if you're in that job, your wages are holding at about $64,000 as a mean average in the United States. Not particularly helpful, but that's the average number. And then we were talking about the fact that there's this remote work impact, and that number is holding strong for year over year, just 0.2% down, which means that even with all the headlines and all the buzz, remote jobs are still out there and viable.
That's interesting, that focus on remote. And, just let's go to the next slide. I talk a lot about the BLS being the best resource for us. But when I go back a second, when I met Jeff, was it a month ago? A little over a month ago.
Yeah,
An ERE event. And he told me about and we're going to talk about what he's going to be doing, or what he's doing now, right? But these numbers always, again, from when they're collected from the government, the jobs added is done by survey. So the government surveys top employers and mid-market employers, and then goes ahead and does household surveys, and then they come up with these numbers. Jeff, on the other hand, has, 10 different sources that you've used, Jeff?
Yep.
So Jeff has put together 10 different sources, Aspen being one of them, to collect data that's more relevant about who's working and what do the job openings look like. So I think there's a huge amount of value in that, and I also like what you're doing with it. But just to get back to the jobs added, we're looking at, pretty much a consistent number here through September and October. Of course, November will be coming out shortly, but this is where we are right now. And then just can you move us along? Okay. And these are the predictions for AI. I'm just going to run through these quickly. You'll get this deck because I know we're all anxious to get onto the conversation and hear about Jeff's thoughts about going forward. But AI shifts from, oh, by the way, I asked AI to give me predictions for AI, which I thought was interesting. And what it came back with, and then compared it to what I was seeing also just from across the board. AI shifts from experimentation to outcomes. We're already seeing that. I think Lindsay and team, have been trying just about everything that's out there, and we're seeing the ones that do perform and the ones that don't. Trends focusing on agentic AI as teammates, a lot more of that. In fact, you'll see us talk about the 6 sources right now for how you hire, and AI agents are something to be considered when you look at that. Who am I going to hire? Who's going to sit in this job? Deeper integration for complex tasks, a big push for trust, ethics, and governance. Key players. This was a resounding theme, by the way, in CEO periodicals, in meetings that I've been with other CEOs, that the CHRO needs to work closely with the CIOs. And, that's the first time that I've really heard that resounding theme. And I was happy to hear it. And I think it's very important for our audience to understand. The key areas include AI agents handling workflows and using repository intelligence for better context, where AI will understand not just individual files or snippets, but the entire history. So if an AI can look at the whole history of a candidate, which is what Jeff is going to talk about soon, the relationship becomes different. And as AI develops and it takes a deeper dive this year, we expect to see a lot more outcomes from that, that look at that whole picture. Leveraging people data as a key asset. So, this was started a long time ago by one of the health organizations. It's the one where you wear the band, Fitbit. I saw a presentation by them years ago that talked about their employees all wear a Fitbit, and they're able to say, well, Harry had a lot of alcohol last night. He didn't sleep well. His performance is low today. Right. So every time they talk about AI looking at workforces, like that's like the furthest end of the end. But it was interesting to me that the Fitbit people that worked at Fitbit knew this, signed all kinds of waivers coming in. I'm not sure what they do now. By the way, we should really see if we can get Fitbit on here. I'd like to see what they're doing these days.
Maybe Whoop. Whoop is sort of the new Fitbit.
What? Say that again.
A company called Whoop is sort of the new Fitbit. And I'd recommend getting somebody from Whoop on. Would be cool.
We could do that. There's also the Ring and the iPhone. I mean, the iWatch. I mean, I use my iWatch. So at what point, though, do employers say, I'm giving you this device, I want you to wear it, and then we'll help manage you from that perspective? Which right up your alley, right, Jeff? Integrating AI with physical tech like robots, and then leaders focused on intentional adoption for real business results. So that's the progress we expect to see. Any comments before we move into the big picture?
I have a couple. Fraud is not on here. It might be the biggest issue. I've been talking with TAs and with employer groups as we've been actually coming out to talk about our product. Fake applicants, fake backgrounds, people cash stacking, working 2 or 3 jobs. This is, I think it's going to be the hot issue as we go into the new year. Having somebody from, I'll use North Korea as an example, that's actually representing themselves as somebody else. And then you come to find out that they took somebody's social security number and that person is actually dead and they're in there getting your IP. And I think that this is a C-suite issue, which very quickly moves into HR and TA, where, we're getting the thing right now. Like, I'll put my hand in front of my face. This is real Jeff here, right? But we're starting to get these interviews, and I think we referenced it a minute ago, where they're getting AI to help them with their answers. That's the first thing. They're getting AI to use the job posting as a cheat sheet, and they're ingesting the job posting and then their resume into their favorite LLM, and they're getting a polished up resume, which is jamming up the ATS systems, and it's hard to tell who's actually the qualified person for the job. Couple other points on AI. You mentioned it, I think, at the top of this list, that there are some outcomes. My developers are vibe coding, and they all have their favorite. And a number of them use a vibe coding system called Warp. And
Jeff, I
what's
think you need to
happening.
define vibe coding for the.
Yeah. So this is basically, they call it a coding editor. I think it's actually developed as tools using the large language model and the training, and they've been able to get it to train so it will write code. And so I asked my senior development team. I have 6 on my team, and I asked them about 2 months ago. I said, "Are you vibe coding?" And what they're doing is they're using these tools. They're putting in sophisticated prompts, and then the system is actually writing the code. And so even 2 years ago, there was zero usage of vibe coding in this application development process. And now I asked my team 2 months ago, I said, "Are you using it?" And there was like hemming and hawing. And so about a month ago, I said, "I'm going to ask this question again. And if you're not using these tools, then I want to understand why you're not, because I think these are really going to help you." Between 90 and 95% of their code is being written by these AI tools. Okay, just think about that for a second, right? And they were talking about productivity and debating it because it doesn't do some things well, but it may be 4 or 5x productivity. So the reason why I talk about this experimentation outcomes and the importance of AI, it's going to change the landscape. If you think about software development as part of our knowledge worker base, is such a huge area, always was protected. If you had a computer science degree, you were always going to have a job, and now there's a lot of pressure. So,
Well, I think what we were talking about last night about some of the legacy systems that really, I hope that our viewers can appreciate this as technology owners, which we are, right? Jeff and I both are.
yep.
We added some development tools back in 22. It changed the entire product to the point that we restructured it. We were able to rewrite it and redo it completely. But to give you an idea, on the roadmap for HireGate was the ability for a recruiter to push a button and have a candidate overview created so that they didn't have to make it themselves. They had to go in and put it together. So we got a call and an opportunity actually from General Motors. And they said, we really like the concept of HireGate. Can it write an overview very quickly for us? So I took that back and said, where is this on the roadmap? I did this on a Thursday afternoon at 3:00, took it to our director of IT. He took it to our lead developer. I talked to him. Saturday at midnight, I got a message, it's done. Now, this was on a 6-month roadmap. It was handed to Lindsay on Monday. She and her team piloted. By Wednesday, we were live. The effect is that it's saving those recruiters 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
4 hours a week.
Yep.
With the tool that we had, maybe 6, that with on the roadmap 6 months down. So when you evaluate your suppliers, especially ATSs, many of them were written in the late 90s and the 2000s. So their infrastructure is created on legacy systems with GUIs and AIs on top. So your ability to make change and have fluidity is much more restricted. That's why you'll see plays in that space, such as Workday buying a Paradox, which is more agile system.
Yep.
But even some of those. So as technology changes, I think we in HR have to become technologists. We have to understand those critical points that you just brought up, Jeff.
So a couple thoughts if I go sort of backwards from what you just said, like the idea of a bigger company buying a more AI-oriented company is at the headline level is very exciting. The challenge is going to be how do you deploy that? And
right.
Anyone that works with some of these systems recognizes this kind of swivel chair activity where you're moving from system to system to system inside one of the big players because they've acquired companies. And so one of the things that you said, which I think is really important, is the companies that go and rewrite the code of the companies that they're purchasing are much more likely to have great integrated services than people that are just bolting on these new ideas because they're really hard to work with the original ideas and the new ideas. And if I zoom out for a minute, a lot of the systems are on kind of Web 2 platforms, right? So they're built, for example, for sourcing, for Boolean search, for keyword search, and then the real innovation was like key phrase searching. But they're actually structured in a more table SQL-oriented way. with the new systems, what I call Web3 systems, we use a Google Stack. We use a Supabase, which is a very capable database that sits on top of BigQuery and the Google systems. And I'm not technical. I'm not a programmer, so we could talk more about this maybe with a tech crew on one of your guests on one of your shows. But the idea here is that the Web3 stack allows your agentic systems to actually talk to each other and sets you up for, back to the first point here, to get better outcomes. And everybody knows the term lipstick on a pig, right? And recognizes that that's not changing the pig. I think you could now describe with a lot of those Web2 systems that it's like AI on the pig, right? Where you're getting something that sounds good and it's sort of fancy in the way your initial PowerPoint looks, but how it functions is not going to get you that flow that you were describing in the agentic systems.
Right. And I think so many of us are kind of, lack of a better term, landlocked into the ATS that we have. And I think it's up to us at this point to really investigate what needs to be done to get to another level. Well, that whether just depending on your internal system or your current supplier to make good for you. Yep. May mean that there's some very inexpensive AI products out there that don't work. There's some very inexpensive products that do work amazingly and can, yep. We had one tool that saved a client $1 million in a year and it cost next to nothing, right? And then I've seen, we just came through a thing where we saw an assessment that was over $1 million, totally inaccurate by month 3. So really understanding what's going on and what you're doing and taking a dive. And then, trusting your own thought process on that as compared to the vendor, I think is important. Yeah. One point before we jump in and we'll lose the deck is that you have been talking about those concerns as far as fraud and how to really manage this whole thing. I think the bullet, a big push for trust, ethics, and governance and the CIOs, that's where that thought pattern is included. I do see a lot of strides in that direction. And certainly one of the largest concerns when we talk to companies that are looking at new AI is how does this work as far as compliance is concerned? Compliance seems to come up first. Cool. Yeah. So just let's lose the deck. And Jeff, talk to us about what you see coming. Of course, Boomband, which I think we're very excited about. Yeah. I don't know if I'm more excited about Boomband or the fact that you have all this data. So tell everybody what you've been up to and what your thoughts are.
Well, let me start with an AI thing that I think everyone's been talking about, which is AI is not going to take your job. Someone that knows AI will. And I felt like that was last fall's, like everybody was talking about that, right? But nobody really was attributed to that. And the reality is then McKinsey came out with a study and said that by 2030, we're going to be 30% more productive using AI. And everyone's like, oh, phew. It's like, okay, so we're going to keep our jobs and we're just going to be doing the things that humans do and that we love. And the tasks that we don't want to do will be done by AI. And I worry that we're in a loop right now where if you make a pie chart of all the things you do in your day, and you think about if those could be done by AI, that we're going to find out that about half of our pie charts could be done by tasks using AI. Those areas are going to be under duress. I don't think we're going to be 30% more productive with the same group of people. I think our teams are going to get smaller. And we're going to be expected to do 10x productivity, the people that stay. So what that means, back to that first thing, is you really do need to get a deeper understanding of AI. No matter how you do that, take a class. I just took the Coursive class. It's $99. It's a pain in the ass. Everyone sees it on LinkedIn. I just did the class. And what I found is some things were painfully obvious, but other things like, oh, that's interesting. And now I can talk about that class. Other people are taking accredited classes in AI. I think even talking with your technologists in your organizations about how they're using AI and seeing if you can challenge yourself. So I want everyone who's listening right now to realize that you can say AI is just headlines. I'm so sick of hearing about it. It is going to change all of our jobs. So I just want this message. 2026 is not going to be I don't know whether it's going to do anything or not. It is going to change what we do. And so being on the forefront of that is very important. I've made it my life's work to really understand it, have our tools, deploy it, and with the idea that it's explainable and it's transparent, which is the things that people are very worried about, and that we're going to advance. Like this is going to change. And so don't sign your next ATS contract without seriously understanding not just what their PowerPoint looks like, but actually use their services. One of the things I heard somebody say is that most people only use 20% of the capability of their applicant tracking systems as it is. So one of the things I do is go ask your ATS vendors, can you give me a new demo of my own product so I can see if there are things that you've added or things I can do now with better technology? Okay.
Well, and I think that point that you made about understanding and getting educated. Last month, we had Troy Avery on. Was that last month? And he self-educated himself in AI by taking a couple YouTube courses, automated his entire HR job. And when I met him, he said, I don't know how I'm going to tell my boss that I've automated my entire job. And so some of the comments that came back after we did this with Troy that I found really interesting is when I look across the board at AI and say, who are the survivors of this, right? Because we have become in HR pretty much reactive. This is a task. I meet that task. I get that task done. It's off my desk and off I go. Where in an AI work situation, what's going to happen is you need to be proactive.
Well, these tasks are being done in parallel. Let's start there, right? So, like, you can no longer be checking things off your task list because they're being done right beside you at the same time. The thing I love about what you just shared is the fact that he actually identified all the different parts of his job and said AI can do all these things, makes him the go-to person in his organization. It makes him the person that's in every conversation. What's his name? Travis?
Troy, are you on? Put your hand up if you're on. Troy Avery is his name.
I didn't see him in the attendees.
Yeah, so it's okay, right? So when there's a conversation going on about AI, guess who's going to be asked to get in the conversation? Troy, right? And we all want to learn enough so we can start talking about it. So when people start saying, okay, who's staying and who's going, Troy's got to stay because he understands how we're transforming. And that's completely by self-initiative from him. So I think 2026 is my challenge to everybody is we have to learn together, right? I always say in my LinkedIn posts, play with me, connect and share and engage because we have to learn together. I don't know what's right. I'm just in this you
can throw rocks at our heads for being entrepreneurs, right? Because we are proactive. To us, that's everything, right? We don't, we kind of be reactive, but we have that in common. But I think everybody in the workforce is going to need to learn how to work on it, not just in it, and be more proactive. Nobody is going to call you up and say, did you look at what the outcome might be if you did this? I mean, in your seat, you need to be, and case in point, we're seeing a lot of push from AI leadership, right? NVIDIA, and many of them saying, you want to know what to take in school, take philosophy. Take ethics, take thought.
Right.
So learning how to change who you are so that you can adapt better to a new work environment.
So my own opinions come out pretty easily here. But this skill-based push is a huge push right now. Everyone is talking about it, right? But the reality is that AI is eating the tasks of these skills. And it's going to keep coming up against the skills. The more we can teach it, one of the things I say is if you can learn your job in 12 or 14 weeks, AI is going to take a lot of that job. But the thing that's going to be left is, are you open-minded? Are you a critical thinker? Are you creative? Do you have the ability to make decisions and to weigh the pros and cons of things? These are all character skills. And these are the skills that everyone's like, blah, blah, blah. They get thrown under the bus a lot, right? when somebody says, do you want to see these types of skills on people's resumes? It's like, no, like, give me those keywords, give me those performance statements. Not really, but that's what our resumes have evolved into. Maybe that's a good bridge. I've spent my whole life in talent. Do you want to?
I think it means moving, and I want you to get to what you're doing, Boomband, on this. But I do think it means moving from this concept that, and I know this is a diversity issue too, but that it's all skills. I should hire you, Jess, because you have the skills, no matter who you are, no matter what you are. When truth out is, for years now, we've been using the EVPs and the complexities and the attitude and the entire, I don't like the word culture because it's too encapsulating, of organizations to say, is this persona a good fit? Because the stickiness is there. And many times we're brought in to create retention. There's a direct correlation between the characteristics of the people who make it in your organization at this division and this division, and they're different, right? There's a commonality, but there's difference. So from there, Jeff, take us to what you're doing with Boomband, especially when it comes to that concept of matching.
Yeah. So, what's funny is we could just talk about change and we're talking about Boomband. So I really don't mind. It's like if we're all just in our field, if we're thinking about change, then some of the things that I'm going to introduce here are become just part of this change and part of this flow. You talked about culture. I love culture, but I think that there's I don't know where it came from, but about 10 years ago, people started talking about culture add, not just culture fit. I love that. It's such a simple, subtle way to say, look, we want people that are going to be successful in our organizations, but we also want people that bring new ideas. And so in any interviewing situation, you don't just want someone that looks like you, that thinks like you. You want somebody that thinks differently and sort of reward that. And the more you reward that in your hiring process, the more you get that added value of different points of view. Okay, so I have some fundamental thoughts about what's happening in a market. And the first one I would say is that some of it's my fault. I put the first job posting and the first resume on the World Wide Web. I decided to keep the resume and the job posting the same because the internet was so innovative. The distribution was going to be so different that I didn't want to disorient people, not just in the way they were going to move from the newspapers to online, but also like, what is this thing? I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. And so I made a decision. I did research. Resumes have been the same since the early 1900s. I have a resume from 1914. It looks just like a resume today. If you think about how scary this is, what did an automobile look like in 1914? What did a telephone look like in 1914? And, it's just out of this world how those things have changed. But yet a resume in 1914, it looked just the same. It had an objective. It had, current employment. It had your education. The only thing at the bottom was that this person enjoyed fox hunting, which you probably wouldn't put on your resume, and also that they were happily married. And I so awesome, right? Like maybe that's something we should bring back, right? I don't know about the
Fox hunting or marriage.
I think maybe the fox hunting, maybe that stays outside. But if one of your passions is hunting and you it's eco-friendly in the way you approach it, whatever, it's not my game. So the first thing for me was, I think I never expected that the job and the resume would stay the same for 32, 33 years since I started Monster, right? And they're the same. And so I started thinking in 2023, who owns the resume? It's like we're all just in a flow about it, right? And who owns the job posting? And so I said, I think the resume needs to change. So I went to, what would I like? Somebody told me resumes are all the things you've done in your life you never want to do again. I thought it was just funny. And
That is funny.
Even though it is a buildup of how you learn and the skills that you bring to the table, one of my things was like, I think the new resume, I call it a dossier. Resume is French. It means summary. That's not good for AI. Then you have your CV, which means you bring your documents in, but your dossier is the compendium of everything. And so I said, okay, well, maybe that's an interesting way to describe what I would like to do. And the other thing I wanted to do is my COO is a marathon runner. He's run 60 marathons and 20 triathlons. And if I look at the amount of skills and abilities he's captured and mastered in being a marathon runner, I wanted him to be able to select from a pick list, just like you do at LinkedIn for your commercial jobs, for marathon running. And then I started thinking about, okay, if you're a work from home, mother or father, right, and you've spent 7 years raising some kids on LinkedIn, that's a career break. It's like, no, that's CEO of household. That has a massive amount of skills associated with it. And I think that we should stop like not crediting what I call life work. If you're a caregiver, and what you can learn from taking care of your mom, reversing roles, the research, the hospital stays, the kind of trying to find the place for mom or whatever it is, right? All of that learning is all stuff that I would like if you as an employee bring those skills into what we do. So that's the first thing, is that I want to build a document that's your whole self. And I want to be able to get that pointless picture of you and score that so that it's part of what we call the Power Lab, where it actually gives you, it's not really credit, it's really recognition for all the skills you bring to the table. The second thing is the job posting is in trouble. Any company that's growing right now has 1,000 people in their queue to apply. The problem is that the quality of these candidates is so masked by all the AI filtering that's happening, and the fact that Easy Apply has just made it too easy to apply. So I was thinking about it. I think we need to add some friction into this process. And so one of my huge thoughts was, I think that we should have a signal that would go to the very best people, as opposed to an announcement that goes out to everybody. So when I started Boomband, so those two factors are hugely driving my idea for building the business. The third one was that when I started Monster, I thought it should be like a piazza. It's like you have your buyer and your seller. Depending on what area you're in, is who's the buyer and who's the seller. But the idea of the companies meeting with the candidates keep their data up to date, and the employers keep their postings up to date, and they meet in the middle. And so that's the concept of having an arena. And I don't know what happened over the last 20 years, but all the power got sucked into the employer stack, the HR stack. And what you get from that is there's no balance. Every resume that's in your system is disconnected from the person. So while they're out changing in your system, they're just the data's aging. I call the applicant pool inside a company like a 2-day-old pizza box. There's a pizza in there. It's on the stove, but you're not going to eat it, right? And so most recruiters are suspect of that applicant pool. Those are the people that didn't get the roles. The reality is the talent in these applicant pools is really exciting. So Boomband, what I decided to do is map the 177 million workers in the United States, build a persona up from the data that I could get about them, and build an unclaimed dossier, and then invite them to come and claim their dossier on our system. And for the employer, then, I wanted to map all the employers, build a dossier like a career page for every employer, and then get the jobs, which I've partnered with Aspen as one of my key sources for that, and also get that company information, so I get the benefits and everything, and then have these two meet in our arena. And I built a very visual arena. And the idea of that is, and I showed you guys yesterday, so you got your first kind of chance.
It's so cool. It is so
your first chance to look at that. And what I think I'll do, we don't want to do PowerPoint here today, but I just wanted to tease you and to say that the idea of this arena. I'll just show it here, and you'll get the idea in 2 seconds, right? So the idea is that in that arena, that you can put a job in the center, and the people that come closest to you are the people that are the best qualified, or you can put a person in the center, and the jobs that are the best match will come to the center. And I would love to do a demo and share with your audience, and we can set that up right after the holidays. But the main point right now is the resume is in trouble, the job posting is in trouble, the technology is no longer nimble enough to be able to take advantage of what is described as the embeddings, the vector embeddings. And in layperson's terms, I take a job posting, and what I really want is the job requirement. I want the hiring manager intake form. I want the old job posting. I want new job information. I want a conversation with the person doing the job right now. Ingest all that and make a signal that then goes into the arena. And then what you'll be able to do is match people. And I have all the people in the country in our system. And then what we'll do is together, we'll go warm up the people that you want to outreach to. The thing that I've discovered is many of the matches in the arena are gainfully employed. And so we built a product, which is called the Slate, where you identify the person that's a really good match for you and play the game in our system. Adjust from remote to hybrid. Take a unicorn skill out or add a unicorn skill in and keep moving until you find the perfect person. We'll use that as a lookalike and match and go find people in the marketplace. We do the work, we do the email sequence, and then we'll deliver back to you a qualified slate of people that are expressing interest and a good match. And so that in a nutshell is what we're building with Boomband.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I have to say
Very
that.
cool.
I know we're starting to come up on time, but just to kind of give you a visual, right? So having looked at this last night, and
by
Jeff,
the way,
help me.
I haven't gotten any feedback from you because our meeting ended because we're at time. I can't wait to hear what you guys are saying.
So, I mean, I think that when I looked at the dossier, because it kind of creeped me out. Okay, big thing when we first met, I'm like, I love the 177 because that's where I live. And I think you've got more data. And I think there's a lot more to that than we can talk about right now.
Yep.
But when I think about Boomband, I also think about assessments that I know that are incredibly successful, which is like 2 out of like, I don't know, 100,000, like just making a number up.
Yep.
But when I looked at yours, so the dossier is kind of like this, right? So this is me, and this is what you've pulled about me. And then my north is what? So
work.
My north is my work history, right? Yeah. My south is
my life work. My passions, my interests, my side hustles.
Being a mom, doing this, doing that, riding bicycles, whatever the case. Okay. My west is
about where you have your boom moments in your life and you share some of what makes you you.
How about your employment history? Where is that?
Me in a nutshell, your employment history is your work. That's north.
And north.
Okay.
And then east is, I'm so excited about this, is we take all of your skills from all the other areas and we build a power lab. And that's basically like your analytics area where you can see and explore all of your skills.
And you as I can come in and claim my dossier and work on it. If not, you've got it anyway.
That's
with
right.
Only some of the information. So just help us all understand, because I know we're coming up on time. Yeah. What does that what we were just talking about, that dossier look like for an organization?
So an unclaimed dossier for a company has your basic information, whether you're public or private, the general size of your employee pool. It has the jobs that we found, and we update jobs every hour and once a day in our system. And so jobs that we found that are from your company. And also because we map all the employees in the United States, it has all the employees of your company. And so what we're doing is we've presented to about 300 TAs now. We have groups of TAs volunteering right now to do everything from helping us build out these dossiers to labeling, try to improve the AI matches, as well as regulation and trust and the things that we're working on, right? When you adopt your employer dossier, then you can add in your benefits, you can add in your news feed, you can add in your socials, you can add in the culture ad experiences that you want to share that make your company special.
So, and how does it match it then? So I think the thing that we were talking about yesterday is, let's say a customer service agent. To me, if I did a profile on a job description for a customer service agent, they have to have a certain level of empathy, right? So will it then say needs 8% or, an 8 on out of 10 for empathy?
So we don't do that scoring like that. What we do is we have like a area where you drag your stuff in and you can talk to it. So you can say, look, I want to share. I'm looking for a software full stack in Boston with this and this and this. Or you can say, okay, here's a description, drag it in. Here is my hiring manager input form, intake form. Let me drag that in. Here's someone in the job that I love. Drag that person in. And then what we're doing is we're compiling those skills and abilities and description. And then we make a signal out of that. And you just hit the button. And it literally goes in the middle of the arena and you can see matches. And then you have the ability to adjust by a whole bunch of filters. So you can filter by location. And you can filter by skills. You can filter by education. You can filter by industry. And then we have 3 views of the arena. We have this round view that I showed you. We have a stack rank view, and then we have a map. So you can see where all the people live, which is one of the aha moments. We're like, okay, now I know where these people live. Now I'm a lot more comfortable that they're in my zone for a hybrid job or for an in-house job.
And we're coming up on time. We're going to do a demo. So, audience, please watch for the announcement. It'll come through the email system. Yeah. If you have a copy of this, same thing, we'll include you, anybody who's registered. Jeff, always love these conversations. Ever since I met you, I'm having these eureka moments. I really appreciate that.
You have been a customer since I was the Monster board.
I bought,
that's like an homage from me. And
that's a whole other story, but I bought like an agreement for
I just want to shout, I'm doing a job seeker virtual holiday party next Monday at 3:00 Eastern time. And it's posted on my page. You can visit me on LinkedIn. Just put Jeff Taylor and Boomband, you'll find me. And I'm trying to do between 500 and 1,000 people that don't have a place to have a holiday party, and we're just going to have fun, do a virtual holiday party. So that's my kind of sort of give back that I'm working on right now. So I wanted to do a shout for that. So it's a pleasure. I've been having fun with you guys, and let's keep it going.
We've got a lot more going on. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. Happy holidays. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful season. We are certainly on a roller coaster going into 2026, but we're on the roller coaster together. Looking forward to seeing everybody coming up soon in January. Have a wonderful holiday. Thank you. Happy birthday, Jess. Thanks for attending. And Lindsay and Jeff, have a great one. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thanks to everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.